There's nothing better than getting a new radio, but one of the difficult things is getting it up and running with the programming software for the local repeaters, as well as the configurations, particularly for DMR radios and hotspots. About 6 months ago, I got a Connect System CS7000 M17 Plus, and to make it easy to get up and running, I wrote a program that will convert my code plug from Anytone to the CS7000. So let's check out the video, and I'll go over the most recent release, which converts the code plug as well as a custom image that you can have when the radio boots up. So let's check it out. So thanks for tuning in. My name is Jason Johnson, amateur radio operator Kilo 3 Juliet Sierra Juliet. And in this video, I'm going to cover the Anytone to CS7000 code plug converter, particularly version 1.3.4, which is a new release. I'm going to cover the code plug converter, and this is software that will allow you to take your Anytone radio's code plug and import it into the CS7000 CPS code plug software and get up and running very quickly. The CS7000 supports two modes for writing digital contacts to the channels. The first mode is called direct mode, and this is where it will enter the talk group number directly in the channel. And then the second mode is called table, and what that method is selecting the name of the channel, and then that will write the information into the code plug to pick it by a name. So my code plug software supports both of these methods. And in the most recent release of the software, I have a tool that will allow you to convert a PNG or JPEG file into the format required by the Anytone factory tool to have a custom boot image when the radio starts up. So let's go ahead and talk briefly about the process that we use in the software to program the radio. There's a couple applications I'll be demonstrating. The first is the Anytone CPS software. I'll use this to export my radio code plug to CSV files. The next application is the CS7000 CPS, and there's a couple different steps we'll use with this. The first, we have to create an empty code plug file and set our DMR ID to prepare the code plug for the new channels. I'll also be importing some CSVs that are converted from the Anytone format into CS7000 format. And then the final thing I'll be doing with this software is once I have written the image, of the boot screen, I'll have to set a configuration flag to have the radio boot up with that custom image. I'm also going to demonstrate how to use the Anytone to CS7000 code plug converter. This is the application that I've created. And there's a couple of settings we have to do with setting the configuration options for the import. We'll set the input directory for where the code plug files are located from Anytone, and then the output directory where we want to write the spreadsheets to be used to import into the CS7000 code plug. And I'll be demonstrating how to use that to convert the code plug. And then we'll also use this application to convert a JPEG or PNG into the BMP format, which is needed for the custom boot screen. And the final application is going to be the factory tool, which can be used to write new firmware to the radio, but we'll be using this to write the custom BMP image. Let's go ahead and go to step one. This will be using the Anytone CPS software to export the code plug. All right, I have the Anytone code plug software up and running. I'm going to go ahead and go into the Tools menu and select Export. And I'm going to click this Export All button. And now what I want to do is go to my desktop, and I'll create a directory. So I'll call it CS7000 Import. And I have to give it the name of the file that I'm going to use. So I'll call it today's date, 2026-08. I think it's the 18th, K through JSJ, Anytone, CPS 4.00. So I'm running the 4.00 software, 4.0 CPS for the Anytone. And I have, go ahead and click yes. And then everything has been exported. And if I go to that directory, I will see a number of CSV files have been written there. along with this LST file. So now we're ready to go on to step number 2. So step number 2 is where we'll go into the CS7000 CPS. We'll create a new code plug, and I'll provision my DMR ID. All right, I'm in the CS7000 CPS software. I'm going to go File New, and I'm going to select the default option here for my radio and click Yes. So now I have a blank code plug. I need to go into the settings and under conventional digital common basic and enter my radio ID. So in this position, you will need to do your DMR ID. Do not use mine. You had to have your own DMR ID. So you'll provision that in that location and go ahead and click the Save button. And we're going to save this to the desktop temporarily. CS7000. I'll just call it CS7000 M17 K3GSJ empty. And one more thing I forgot to change is put my call sign in. So under General Settings, I want to change my radio to my call sign. And I'll go ahead and save that. All right, we completed step 2, creating the empty code plug with the DMR ID. Now we're ready to go to step 3, which this will be to load the Anytone to CS7000 code plug converter, and we will convert the CSV files from the Anytone export into the spreadsheets required to import into the CS7000 CPS. And I'm also going to demonstrate how to configure a boot image, so we can use a custom boot image with the radio boot up. All right, I've already installed the code plug converter, and I've created a shortcut to it, so I'll double click the shortcut and you get a splash screen. And the first time you launch this on your system, you'll get a terms of use agreement. So please read over that and accept the terms of use. If you choose to use the software, if you click reject, it will exit. So I'm going to go ahead and select accept. And you get a pop-up once per day asking for support to me for this application, as well as my YouTube content. And then you get a refresh. So now you have the main code plug application window. There's a couple settings you need to make. The first would be, what type of channels do you want to import, digital or digital and analog. If you want to use the features such as, there's a set of features that come with the default firmware for GPS and scan and GMRS. You have to pick digital and analog in order for those channels to persist. So I'll pick that, digital and analog channels. And then I have this option, include the default zone and channels from the firmware. So that's needed if you want to use the scan feature, the GPS feature, GMRS feature, or the analyzer feature. So I'm going to go ahead and click include. Now, there's two methods that the CS7000 uses to configure the contacts for who you're contacting on a given channel. The first method is direct, and what the direct mode will do is write the talk group ID right into the channel. So if you're trying to connect to, say, 3124, which is Maryland statewide on my local hotspot, the number 3124 would be written in that channel. The other method is this table method, which is going to do a lookup of a name from the channel into the contacts table. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the table method to do my code plug. When you pick the table method, you're going to get three output files. The first will be digital contacts, the second will be channels, and the third will be zones. If you pick the direct method, it will not produce any output digital channels, okay? So I would encourage you to do the table method. Now what I'll do is select the input folder for where my input CSVs are located for the Anytone export, and recall I did that on my desktop. and I called it CS7000 import. So I'm going to go ahead and select this folder. Now I have to pick the output directory. And what I would recommend is using the same folder that you did, but create a separate folder called CS7000. And we're going to go ahead and put all the output files there. The reason why I wouldn't have a separate folder is we want to keep all the files to import into the Connect System CPS in one location. It just makes it very easy to import the information and cuts down on mistakes. So now we've already made the configuration. So what we'll do is we'll click this Convert Code Plug. Now, I get a warning pop up that I have in my Anytone radio. There's two channels that have the same name. So the Anytone radio supports that, but the CS7000 does not. So I have to pick. Now, the CS7000 is only a UHF radio, so I have two channels, a VHF and a UHF. So I'm going to go ahead and pick just the UHF channel. And then I have another channel at the same case. So I'll go ahead and select that. And it will convert the code plug and create 3 files. These files will be first the digital contacts, the channels, and the zones. The application also will give you output messages that VHF channels are excluded from the code plug because, like I said, this radio only supports UHF, and it tells you where the output files are located. It also gives you a message that it removes some duplicate channels. So I would give a reminder at this point in time, if you have any channels that are FM on local repeaters, the default CPS for the CS7000 only supports 12.5 kilohertz channels. So that would be narrowband FM. There is a special mode that you can use to launch the CPS software to have it boot up in wide channel mode, 25 kilohertz mode. And I would refer you to the website for the directions on doing that. I believe you have to provide it an option -K when you launch the application. Okay, we've completed step 3, which is converting the Anytone code plug into the format. Oh, one step I did forget. Let's go back to the software. I'll show you how to use the boot image tool. So under the tools menu of the code plug converter, I have this new feature called Create Boot Image BMP. And it will show you a box that is 160 pixels by 128. That's the resolution that the the CS7000 supports. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick an image that I want to use for my boot image. And I already have a avatar created for my call sign, so let me go ahead and navigate to that image. And I have a couple different options. I'm going to go ahead and go with this logo on a white background. I also have one which is on black, so I'll go ahead and pick the white. Now it will scale the image as best as it can to try to fit within this 160 by 128. But because this is perfectly not symmetric, I'm not perfectly in the rectangle here. So all I'll have to do is just reduce the zoom factor a couple times to get it to fit within the box. What you'll also notice, it may be hard to see on your screen, is there's kind of an off-white cream color on my image, but on the surrounding bars here, it's totally white. So what I have to do is I can either leave this like this, and I'll have a couple pure white bars on the edges, but I can also use this Pick Background Color tool, and when I highlight that and I click on a color, it will fill the remaining space up with that color. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and click Save BMP, and I'm going to put it in my same directory. So I'm going to call this CS7000 boot image K3JSJ, and I'll save that BMP file. And then it saved it. The nice thing is I do persist settings for both the input file location, the output file, and your options, as well as the boot image. So when you close this and load the application next time, it will come back as if when you just left it. So that's kind of a nice feature. All right, we've converted everything with the CS7000 with the code plug and the boot image. Let's move to step 4 next, which will be to import the CSVs and then write this out to the code plug. All right, I've gone back into the CS7000 CPS, and there's a particular order that you must use to import the files. And those are going to be, and it's the order listed on the menu here. So we're going to first import the digital contacts, then we're going to import the channels, then we're going to import the zones. This import feature can take a little bit of time, particularly if your code plug is large. So just if it's sitting there and not doing anything, you think it's not doing anything, it's actually working. Just give it some time and it will complete. So let's open the digital contacts to import those. Go into my desktop, CS7000 import, and I want to pick the contacts spreadsheet file and click open. All right, so the contacts have been imported successfully. The next option we're going to go into is import the channels. This can take a while to complete. And I'm going to go ahead and select the channels file and click open. And I'm going to fast forward this portion of the video because, like I said, this will take some time. Successfully been imported into the code plug. And then the final step will be to import the zone list. And this, like I said, may take a while depending upon the size of your code plug. I'll go ahead and select that and click open, and I'll fast forward the video until it's complete. All right, that didn't take very long at all. So let's go ahead and take a look at our code plug and see what has been accomplished. So go under conventional settings, DMR services, and contact, and this is going to list the name of the talk groups. These are the same names in the Anytone radio. An important point to let you guys know is special characters such as dashes, commas, are not supported with the CS7000. So those are replaced by, I believe, spaces is what I used. I have to double check that, but in any event, it's either spaces or periods. So those are going to be removed. And these should match directly into the settings for my Anytone radio. And you see I have provisioned around 100 separate talk groups. So next, let's go under the channels portion. And there's two sets of channels. The first will be the analog channels. And there's quite a bit of these channels that are the default features from the radio. There's a GPS feature. So there's quite a bit of channels that are taken up for that feature. There's GMRS frequencies that you can monitor GMRS. There's a spare scan. This is for the scan feature. There's a bulk edit kind of feature for the firmware. There's a analyzer feature for the radio firmware. So you'll notice that around 288 of these channels are defaults for the firmware. And then at line 289 is where my code plug begins. I'll take a look just quickly at the Laurel repeater here, and I see what it's set to. Yep, so this is what I had pointed out before. I'm running a new version of CPS. I did not load this to use the wide format. So let me go ahead and reboot this, and then we'll do another re-import and fix that. All right, so to boot this up to support wide channels, I'm going to go ahead and right-click the shortcut, go into Properties, and then for the target, I'm not going to change any of these, but I'm going to do a space -K and click Apply. And I'm going to provide administrator privilege for that. So just a quick edit after the first video. I entered a option wrong when launching the software. I used a -K when I should have used an uppercase K. So I'm going to skip a couple minutes where I just re-imported the code plug and it didn't work. I want to skip to the part of the video where I enter the option to enable the wideband mode, the 25 kilohertz channel, and that's going to be -K, capital K, and at that point we'll pick up the radio with re-importing the code plug. All right, I think I found my issue. I used a lowercase k to boot up the software. Yep, I use a lowercase k. So if you do an uppercase K, that's going to enable the wide band mode for the software. I went ahead and saved my CPS file to this narrow band version. Now if I go into analog channels portion, go down to 292. There it is, 25 kilohertz. So I do have a couple channels to update with this, so I'm just going to go ahead and re-import those. Because otherwise I could go through channel by channel and update it, but it's just going to be quicker to go ahead and re-import the channels file. And this will take a bit of time. And the channel files have been imported successfully. So let's pick one of the other channels here. I'll pick the Jessup repeater. And it's set to 25. Okay, so that's all working properly. And the final thing I'll pull up is the zones. So we have a number of these zones that are the GPS, GMRS, enhanced scan, enhanced edit, and analyzer mode for the firmware. I believe these started in version 93 of the firmware. And then these are the default zones that come with the radio. And then these are my zones for my particular code plug. So now we're done with the import. All right, so I've demonstrated how to import your code plug into the CS7000, and I also demonstrated how to turn on the wideband mode, which I thought I already did that, but it's a good thing to illustrate. So now we're at the point where we're ready to write the code plug to the radio. All right, so now I have the programming connector connected up to the radio. I'll go ahead and turn on the radio. Now, important step that you have to do when you're using the table method is you need to make sure that you're going to write the digital contacts to the radio. If you don't do this and you only write the channels and zones and you pick a channel and you try to transmit, you're going to get an error message on the radio. So I did that last night and couldn't figure it out. I emailed Jerry and he said, it sounds like you forgot to write the contacts file, which I did. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I don't repeat that mistake again. So I'm going to select both of these options, the RCDB, which is the database file, and also make sure this contact is selected. And that's going to write the contact channels and zones to the radio, along with all the other settings of the radio. With I'm right now just using the default button settings. I'll probably go back later and tailor those. All right, now the radio is booting up. All right, I'll go ahead and disconnect the programming cable from the radio. And the radio is booted up. I don't have a default zone, so I'm going to go ahead and pick my hotspot. And I have it set to the Parrot talk group. So let me go ahead and make a quick parrot call and verify that everything is working. You might hear briefly some static on the microphone because the radio is very close to the mic. Let's go ahead and make a parrot call and prove everything's working properly. This is Kilo 3 Juliet Sierra Juliet testing parrot on a hotspot using the CS7000.
This is Kilo 3 Juliet Sierra Juliet testing parrot on a hotspot using the CS7000.
All right, great. So we have now successfully programmed our CS7000 with the Anytone software. Now I'm going to demonstrate how you can write the custom boot image to the radio and rewrite the settings of the radio back to have that boot up with that image. And what I'm going to demonstrate now is how to use the factory tool to write the BMP file. All right, the factory tool is available on the CS7000 website, and there's two modes to it. The first mode is for the DMR side of the radio. The other side is for the OpenRTX side. I'm going to actually work with the DMR side. So there's a number of options that we can pick to write files to the radio. I'm only going to use the option for the welcome image. So I'm going to make sure that checkbox is checked. I want to select the file icon, and I'm going to pick on my desktop. Recall I exported this BMP to this one. So I've already selected that. Now I need to connect my radio back up to the programming cable. All right, what I have to do now is I have to enter the special boot mode on the radio in order to allow files to be written with the factory tool. So the way that you do that is you hold the push-to-talk key. Oh, turn the radio off. Okay, the radio is off. So the way that you do that is you hold the orange button, PTT, and you turn on the radio. So this boots up in a special icon. This is, I think, the Android robot icon, and that then demonstrates that you are in the mode that you can use the factory tool on. So now I can click the upgrade button, and I'll write the welcome image to the radio. And then the radio is going to reboot, but the mode is going to just show booting. I'm sorry, the boot's going to just show DMR. All right, we've written the boot image to the radio. So now what we need to do is step 6, which is going back to the CPS software and selecting the option for the radio to boot with our custom boot image. All right, so to set the boot image, what we're going to go into is this general settings menu. And if you scroll down, there's a option that you can pick the power up welcome message for default, or you can pick user defined. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the user defined one, and I'm going to go ahead and save my coplug again to make sure I persist that setting. Now my radio is up, it's up and running, and I do not need to enter the special boot mode to write the coplug back. So we'll go ahead and just click the right button, and I'm going to select the RCDB and the contact, and I'm going to click OK. All right, everything has been written successfully. Let me go ahead and disconnect the radio from the computer. All right, now I have the radio, it is off, so I'm going to go ahead and boot the radio back up, and you should see the custom logo, which there it is. There's a custom logo. It displays for a short amount of time, and then you're back to the default menu. So in this video, I've gone through the process of how you can use my Anytone to CS7000 coplug converter to quickly get your code plug from your existing DMR radio, convert it over for the CS7000. I've demonstrated how to create the default blank code plug for the CS7000, provision your DMR ID, and then use my code plug converter to do the conversion. We've covered how to import the default firmware channels and use the table method for importing the contacts. And then we imported everything into the CPS for the M17, the CS7000 M17, and then we wrote the code plug out. And then finally, I demonstrated how you can convert a image that you have into a format for a custom boot message for your radio. So thanks for watching the video. If you find this application or the videos on my channel helpful, I would encourage you to consider subscribing first to my YouTube channel. That's free to do. You'll get notifications when I drop new videos. If you'd like to support me with a donation, you can do that by donating to my Buy Me a Coffee site, and I'll have the URL for that here on the screen. And yeah, please subscribe, and I trust that you guys are having a great summer. We're wrapping things up and getting ready to go into the fall season. Schools are starting back up. And if you have any questions about the video, please feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is on QRZ. Also encourage you to go to my website, k3jsj.net, which you'll find the link to this application, as well as other applications and my post to my blog. So this has been Jason, K3JSJ, and thanks for tuning in. Until we meet you again, 73.